Now, as we look at today's topic, a popular phrase that I'm sure all of you have heard numerous times over the past few months, if not the past year, it's been circulating when it comes to athletes and activism. And the phrase is, the athletes stick to sports era is over. Across all professional sports, notably the NFL and the NBA, as well as some college sports, athletes are using their platform to make a social statement. Now, these statements are starting conversations among the public and making an actual difference in how society discusses the issues of race, politics, social justice, and a number of other issues. That's why we are very fortunate to have Jed and Harry here today, because we're really looking forward to hearing their different perspectives on this current wave of athlete activism and protest in America. So let's get started. Jed, I want to start with you. From your vantage point as a CEO, as ownership, what's your responsibility to foster this type of activism amongst your players? And is there ever a line, that imaginary line, that you're maybe worried about crossing or don't want to cross?
I think if you start with conversation, it's easy not to worry about the line. I think everything starts with conversation. And I think the role that we've tried to play is allowing our players to express their beliefs, their opinions, what they've lived with, what they've grown up with, and allow them to sort of communicate to others and say, listen, if you want to get involved in the community, we're more than happy to get involved with you. And that's anything from what we're labeling as social activism to taking care of pets, to kids with cancer. There's so many things that our players get involved with. And I think we need to be careful to say, not everybody has to go do social activism. You have to do what's natural and what feels comfortable to you. And we'll help you along the way, whatever that is.
The circumstances today are different because of the impact of the internet. You have athletes today who have a platform that's unprecedented in human history, really. You have a situation where an athlete can hit the most provocative, explosive, dangerous word in the history of the English language, S-E-N-D. And all of a sudden, whatever he's saying goes out to 1 million people who send it out to 1 million more. And next thing you know, it's around the globe. That amounts to power.
First, it started with sitting. And I think Colin had some great conversations with folks that said, this could be taken the wrong way, as disrespectful. Kneeling is not a disrespectful gesture. You can still get your point across and try to be respectful to the military. And I think that was a first step in the first conversation that we had and Colin had together. And I think that's a big step. Not one person is going to change the course of history and the course of social injustices that have taken place. But I think more than anything, it started a conversation. And it's certainly gone many, many different directions. And I think the challenge now is to say, okay, the purpose of this was to identify things that are wrong in our country, to look at socioeconomic disparity, to look at some of the things that have happened to people of color and minorities in our country, and to at least bring them to light. We're all trying to figure out, how do we move this from protest to progress? And that's hard when you have many, many people that look at this issue many, many different ways.
The challenge of moving from protest to progress was on the table from day one. We discussed that from the very first time that there was an issue. But it's been done with dignity, it's been done nonviolent, it's been done without a lot of disrespect. Nobody's calling for riots in the streets, nobody's calling for violence against anybody.
We're starting to put a program together that's going to put tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into the community, where we're going to get programs where players are going to lead them, owners are going to help back them financially and through influence and through participation. You have a very, very big platform to make a change, but it starts with that communication and that dialogue, and that's where we have to be.
So as I look at the situation today, and Jed and I have talked about this about a month ago, I remember having a conversation with him where it was inevitable, if there's anything at all to this Russian intervention in terms of the politics of the 2016 presidential election, it's also inevitable that they would probably utilize that same technology to intervene in the conflict and so forth going on within the NFL. I guess about a week ago, a Republican senator came out and said, we have evidence that the Russians have intervened in the NFL conflict. Well, these things are foreseeable. And if they are foreseeable, then there comes with that an obligation to behave more intelligently in terms of managing their impact, not just within the institution of sport, but from the institution of sport to the broader society. I never try to tell athletes what to do. I try to give them a rational perspective on what their options are so that they can see, if I take this path, here's where it's likely to come out. If I take that path, here's where it's likely to come out. They dream of doing great things. And my advice to them is to learn to dream with your eyes open, because that is where you come out best, both in terms of your goals and your impact.
And I think our players have always done things in the community. It's definitely more prevalent in locker rooms that people are talking about race issues. And I mean, sexual orientation, things that were just taboo subjects in the locker room, at least publicly. There's more open dialogue in the locker rooms. And again, I think you have to make sure that you're looking at what are we doing together as a group on the field. Like, that's why you come together first and foremost. The more that you can share who you are, where you come from, what are you about, what's your family about, the tighter that bond becomes. I think that's the biggest thing that's changed. Not that players want to do good for their communities, sort of just that that dialogue inside the locker room that doesn't escape has changed.
Silence is evil's greatest ally. And what is happening is that as the media projects more and more of what a substantial portion of the population considers to be evil, there's a pressure, a palpable pressure to break the silence. But what has come with that is an increasing effort on the part of enlightened, visionary ownership, administrators, to make sure that there's a conversation about it, as opposed to an internal fratricidal war, which could actually destroy a locker room if it is not managed properly. So the media, again, is something that's driving this need for intelligent, progressive management of a situation that we can neither avoid nor eliminate.
But nobody is watching other professions the way they're watching the National Football League. And that gives you a platform to be able to do things. And people are crazed with reality TV shows, and then when you see behind the scenes of sort of how the reality TV show is put together, the NFL is real. It's not reality, it's real.
Football is a quintessential team sport. You're vitally dependent on that guy next to you, that guy in front of you. And in the age of the internet and the age of the social media, it has to be discussed.
We are putting real money behind this. We are going to match players' funds. That's a huge deal for the National Football League to make that type of statement. But there's a lot more that can be done, and I think a lot of people's eyes are being opened, and I think they're wise enough to not open their mouth if they don't know the right things to say.
Our circumstances are dynamic and diverse. That this issue is going to continue. It's going to be perpetual. It's going to be multifaceted. We're one video of a shooting or something like that away from another explosion. The league sit down and write a nice, dignified letter to the president saying, please, allow us to run the NFL, and you run the nation.
There's a long, long way to go before we make real progress, and we need to focus on that and block out noise from wherever it's coming from and focus on that progress if we're going to get to where we want to go. It's not going to happen just because somebody took a knee or somebody wrote a check. It's going to take a lot more action than that. And it's very, very easy to throw people off course. We're trying to figure out the best way to move forward.
We're going to come through this because that's what Americans do. That's what we the people do. We're going to be just fine.